I arrived in Chicago with no prior notice, imagining a tearful, happy reunion. But instead, I found my daughter wasting away, alone, in an intensive care unit. All the while, her husband was celebrating on a lavish boat, throwing my money around for expensive drinks and entertainment. Consumed with rage by his betrayal, I cut him off from every penny. Within an hour, he was frantic, and that was only the start of it. As the plane began its descent toward O'Hare, I took out my phone, my fingers shaking just a little as I composed a text. Touching down in 20 minutes, this is going to be the surprise of her life. Hitting the send button felt like sealing a vow I was moments away from fulfilling. 3 years. It had been far too long. The photograph I kept in my purse was worn and soft around the edges from how often I'd handled it. It showed Clara, my Clara, laughing in her kitchen, a light dusting of flour in her dark hair. Sophie was right beside her, grinning with a missing front tooth. Little Leo was proudly holding up a colorful drawing. I had looked at that picture every single day since my David passed away. But this day felt different. Today, I was finally taking action against the persistent ache in my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final approach into Chicago O'Hare International Airport. My restless hands tightened on the armrests as a familiar sense of anticipation washed over me. The last person I had surprised was David, for his 50th birthday. That felt like an entirely different lifetime now. 5 years of grieving had made me a stranger, even to my own child, but Clara's voice from our last conversation 3 months ago haunted me. "I'm just so tired, Mom. Just really, really tired." There was something in her tone that had stuck with me. A little burr of worry that I couldn't dislodge. The baggage claim hummed its monotonous tune as I stood waiting, observing other families joyfully reuniting all around me. A young mother scooped her toddler into a tight hug. An older couple warmly embraced their grown son. Soon, that would be me and Clara. Only she had no idea I was coming. "Lincoln Park. Please," I said as I settled into the back of a rideshare, holding up my phone to show the driver the address. "I'm going to see my daughter. It's a surprise. Surprise visits are the very best." The driver responded in a thick accent, merging into the dense Chicago traffic. "My family back in Mexico. They always love it when I just show up." The highway stretched out before us, the iconic skyline piercing the April afternoon sky. Chicago looked just as I remembered it from my last visit. Bustling, grand, and a world away from the quiet Ohio town where I had raised Clara. She had always been drawn to bigger places, more brilliant lights. David used to joke that our daughter inherited her adventurous spirit from me. From a time when I still believed in taking chances, I almost called Clara twice during the ride, my thumb hovering over her name, but I stopped myself each time. No. It was better to surprise her in person. Seeing the look on her face would be more than worth the short flight and my stiff back. "Is this the address?" The driver slowed to a stop in front of a charming brownstone with crisp white trim and a small, neat front garden. It was perfect. I paid him in cash, took my small suitcase, and stood on the curb as he pulled away. The spring sun felt pleasant on my shoulders as I approached the front door, mentally rehearsing my opening line. Maybe I'd make a joke about her old mom finally mastering the art of booking flights online. Or maybe I would just hold my arms open wide and wait for her to run into them, just like she did when she was a little girl. I reached into my purse and retrieved the small gift I'd brought. A hand-painted ceramic jewelry box I had made in my studio, a place to keep her grandmother's ring safe until Sophie was old enough for it. David would have been so happy to see it passed down. My finger hovered over the doorbell, and for a beat, I just stood there, savoring the feeling of anticipation. 3 long years of phone calls and text messages were about to transform into real hugs, shared dinners, and stories exchanged face to face. I finally pressed the button, hearing a familiar chime sound within the house. And then, nothing. I pressed it again, this time holding it down for a few seconds longer. The chime echoed through what felt like a completely silent home, followed again by that same unsettling quiet. "Clara! It's Mom!" I called out, giving the door a few firm knocks. Maybe they were in the backyard, or upstairs with headphones on. Children can make a lot of noise. It was possible they just hadn't heard me. The silence grew longer. I took a step back from the porch to get a better look at the house. The rose bush planted near the front window was browning at the edges, its petals strewn across the walkway like sad, discarded confetti. When did Clara stop caring for her garden? She used to send me pictures of her roses every single spring. I walked over to the side gate and peeked through the wooden slats into the backyard. The patio furniture was deserted, coated in a thin film of dust. The little vegetable garden she had been so immensely proud of was now just a patch of withered, brown stalks. A child's tricycle was tipped over near the back door, one of its wheels spinning idly in the breeze. "That's odd," I mumbled to myself, making my way back to the front of the house. The mailbox was crammed full of letters and small packages, with some having spilled onto the ground below. I bent down and gathered a few of them. Utility bills postmarked 3 weeks ago, junk mail, and a package for Mark that looked like it had been sitting out for several days. The most recent postmark I could find was from 10 days ago. My heart started to beat a little faster. That old architect's instinct began to surface. When a system is failing, there is always a rational explanation. I just needed to find more information. I cupped my hands around my eyes and pressed my face against the living room window. It was dark inside, with the curtains drawn. I saw no movement, no flicker of a television, and heard none of the usual sounds of a family at home. The house had a feeling of abandonment, yet I could make out familiar objects. Clara's painting easel in one corner, Leo's toy cars scattered across the coffee table. "Excuse me, are you looking for the Monroes?" I turned around to see an elderly woman wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat approaching from the house next door, a pair of gardening shears in her gloved hand. "Yes, I am. I'm Eleanor Vance, Clara's mother. Have you happened to see them recently?" She paused, wiping her brow with the back of her wrist. "Now that you mention it, no. It's been unusually quiet over there. I normally hear the children playing in the yard in the mornings, but..." Her voice trailed off as she studied my face. "Is everything okay?" "I'm sure it is," I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "They must have gone on a trip, maybe to visit some family." She didn't seem convinced. "Well, I do hope they're all right. Such a lovely family." As she went back to her flowers, I sank down heavily onto Clara's front steps, the small ceramic box still clutched in my hands. The facts just weren't adding up. Clara would have told me if they were going on vacation during our last call, and Mark was obsessed with social media. He would have been posting pictures from wherever they went. I pulled out my phone and began scrolling through Clara's Facebook profile. Her last post was from 6 weeks ago, a picture of Sophie's art project from school. Before that, there had been almost 2 months of complete silence. My daughter, the woman who once documented every family meal and weekend trip, had gone completely dark. The afternoon shadows stretched longer as I sat there, just staring at the silent house. A jogger ran by with earbuds in, lost in their own world. Somewhere on the block, a lawnmower sputtered to life. A sound so normal and comforting that it felt completely out of place with the dread that was tightening in my chest. I checked under the welcome mat, and then felt along the rim of a large flower pot by the door. No spare key. The front doorknob wouldn't budge in my hand locked, of course. "All right, Eleanor," I said out loud, trying to calm my fraying nerves. "Don't jump to conclusions. There has to be a logical explanation." But as I sat on those steps, surrounded by all the signs of abandonment and neglect, I couldn't escape the feeling that my surprise visit had uncovered something far more sinister than just an empty house. It was time to call Clara. My thumb hesitated over her contact before I finally pressed it, my anxiety growing with each ring. 1 ring, 2, 3, and it went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Clara. Please leave a message, and I'll call you back as soon as I can." Her bright, recorded voice made my chest ache. I hung up and immediately dialed her number again. The same thing happened. Voicemail after 4 rings. Her phone was either off, or she was actively ignoring calls. The 3rd time, I let it ring and ring, ready to leave a message. "Hello?" The voice that answered was not my daughter's. It was male, professional, and guarded. "Clara? This is Mom. I'm in Chicago. I came to surprise you, but no one is home and, ma'am, this is Dr. Chen from Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Are you a relative of Clara Monroe?" The ground seemed to fall away from beneath me. I gripped my phone tighter, my other hand instinctively reaching for the porch railing to steady myself. "What? Yes. I'm her mother. Why do you have her phone? Where is she?" There was a pause that seemed to stretch into an eternity. "Mrs. Vance, I am so sorry to have to tell you this, but your daughter is a patient in our intensive care unit. She has been getting treatment for advanced stage cancer, and her condition is currently critical." The words struck me like physical blows. Cancer. Critical. My vision started to tunnel. "That's not possible." My voice came out as a strangled whisper. "I just spoke to her 3 months ago. She was fine. She said she was just tired from keeping up with the kids." "Ma'am, I know this is a terrible shock. Stage 4 cancer can move very quickly, and it's not uncommon for patients to avoid sharing their diagnosis with family right away. She has been in our care for several weeks." Several weeks. The dead garden, the overflowing mailbox, the silent house, it all snapped into place with a horrifying, sickening clarity. "Where is Mark? Her husband? Where are my grandchildren?" Another pause. "I can't discuss other family members, Mrs. Vance. Due to patient privacy regulations, I can't share those details. But I strongly suggest you come to the hospital as soon as you can. Your daughter has been asking for you." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. "What's the address?" "I'm coming right now. Northwestern Memorial Hospital, 250, 1 East Huron Street. When you arrive, ask for the Oncology Intensive Care Unit. Dr. Chen." The line went silent. I just stared at the phone in my trembling hands. The afternoon sun suddenly felt too harsh, too warm, too normal for a world in which my daughter was dying and I hadn't even known. 3 months ago, she told me she was tired. Tired, and I had been so lost in my own grief, my own solitude, that I had missed every single warning sign. The little ceramic jewelry box slipped from my lap and clattered onto the porch steps. David's ring was meant for Sophie one day. But what if that day was never going to come? What if I was already too late? I stood up too fast, my head spinning, and stumbled toward the street like an automaton. A cab. I needed to find a cab. The hospital's address was seared into my brain. 251 East Huron Street, Oncology Intensive Care Unit. As I managed to flag down a yellow taxi, a single horrifying thought circled endlessly in my mind. How had I become the kind of mother who finds out her own daughter is dying from a stranger over the phone? The taxi door closed with a heavy thud, a sound that felt like it was sealing my old life away for good. I gave the driver the crumpled piece of paper with the hospital's address, my hands still shaking from the shock. "Northwestern Memorial Hospital, please. As fast as you can. Traffic's pretty bad this time of day, ma'am, but I'll do my best." His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. taking in my obvious distress. "It's an emergency. My daughter." The words felt lodged in my throat. "She's dying." The vinyl seat beneath me felt unreal, too mundane for a person whose entire world had just shattered. Through the window, Chicago's traffic flowed in its usual chaotic rhythm. People were heading home from their jobs, stopping for groceries, living their normal everyday lives, while mine was spiraling into an absolute nightmare. Cancer. Stage 4. Critical. I pulled out that worn photograph again, staring at Clara's smiling face. How could I have missed it? That last phone conversation played over and over in my head. "Just tired, Mom. Really tired." The way she'd said it, as if she were carrying some immense invisible burden. I had chalked it up to being a mother, work stress, the typical exhaustion that comes with raising 2 young children. What kind of a mother was I? The taxi moved forward in fits and starts through the congested streets, and memories came flooding back, uninvited. Clara taking her first unsteady steps toward me in our old kitchen, her arms outstretched, with absolute trust in her eyes, teaching her how to ride a bicycle in the park near our house, running beside her until I finally realized she'd been pedaling on her own for the last 50 feet. Her high school graduation, that proud smile on her face as she accepted her diploma. Walking her down the aisle just a few years ago, Mark had promised to love and protect her. "I'll take good care of your daughter, ma'am," he'd said, shaking my hand with a firm, confident grip. Where was he now? Why hadn't he called me the moment she got sick? I tried calling Mark's number for the 4th time. Straight to voicemail, again. "Mark, this is Eleanor. I'm in Chicago. Clara is in the hospital, and you need to call me back this instant." The message felt weak, far too polite for the fury that was building inside my chest. My daughter was in a fight for her life, and her husband was completely unreachable. "Faster, please," I urged the driver. "She's only 38. She has 2 small children." "So young," he murmured, pushing through a yellow light. "I have a daughter too, same age. This is heartbreaking." Through the window, the city's towering buildings stood against the afternoon sky, completely indifferent to human sorrow. David used to say, "Chicago looks like a city of giants, but it can feel awfully lonely." He had been right about that, just as he'd been right about so many things. If David were still here, he would have known about Clara's illness. Fathers have that kind of intuition, that unseen connection. He would have sensed something was terribly wrong during those phone calls, would have pushed her for more details, maybe even flown out here himself. But David was gone, and I had spent 5 years drowning in my own sorrow. Instead of being the mother my daughter desperately needed, I folded and refolded the paper with the hospital address, creasing it into a tiny square. The paper felt solid and real, the only tangible thing in a day that had become a waking nightmare. This morning, I was a retired architect, planning a happy surprise. Now, I was racing through a strange city to see my dying daughter. The taxi finally arrived at the hospital entrance, just as dusk began to streak the sky with shades of purple. A modern structure of glass and steel loomed before me, imposing and sterile. Through the large windows, I could see people moving with purpose down brightly lit hallways, doctors, nurses, and other families, grappling with their own private crises. "Here you are, ma'am." The driver's voice was gentle. "Good luck with your daughter." I gave him cash with unsteady hands, grabbed my suitcase, and stepped onto the sidewalk as he drove away. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, revealing a contemporary lobby filled with colorful art that seemed grotesquely cheerful under the circumstances. I walked to the information desk, where a woman with a kind face looked up at me. "Oncology Intensive Care Unit," I managed to say. "My daughter, Clara Monroe. I'll need to see your ID, please, and have you sign in." She passed me a visitor's badge and a clipboard. Take the elevators to the 7th floor. My hands trembled as I scribbled my name. The elevator ride felt interminable. Each glowing floor number a countdown to devastation. When the doors opened, the smell of antiseptic hit me instantly. That distinct hospital combination of harsh cleaning products and human suffering. Dr. Chen was waiting by the nurse's station, a compact man with kind eyes framed by wire-rimmed glasses. He offered his hand as I approached. "Mrs. Vance, I'm glad you arrived safely." "How is she?" The question came out as a ragged whisper. "She's stable for the moment. The chemotherapy wasn't as effective as we had hoped, but she is responding to the current treatment we're trying." He gestured down the hall. "She's been asking for family. She'll be so relieved that you're here." We walked past rooms filled with the quiet, rhythmic beeping of machines and hushed voices. Through one open door, I saw an elderly man, gently holding his wife's hand. Through another, a young mother was reading a story to a child with a bald head. Room 712. "Dr. N 712, Chen said softly. "I should prepare you. Her illness has taken a significant physical toll, but mentally and emotionally, she is still very much herself." Nothing could have prepared me. Clara was propped up in the hospital bed, tethered to monitors that traced her heartbeat in steady, glowing green lines. IV tubes ran from her arms to bags of clear liquid hanging from metal stands. She looked so tiny, so delicate, a mere shadow of the vibrant woman who had danced so joyfully at her wedding. But when her eyes met mine, her face lit up with the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. "Mommy," the word was just a whisper, but it hit me with the force of a freight train. I crossed the room in 3 quick steps and gently wrapped my arms around her, terrified I might somehow break her. She felt as fragile as a bird, all sharp angles where soft curves used to be. Oh, my sweet girl. The tears I had been desperately holding back since that phone call finally broke free. "I'm here now, I'm not going anywhere. I didn't want you to worry." She breathed against my shoulder. "You were still grieving, Dad. And I thought I could get through this on my own." I pulled back to look at her face, carefully smoothing the thin hospital blanket over her shoulders, the same way I used to tuck her in at night when she was afraid of monsters under the bed. "Why didn't you tell me? We could have faced this together." Her eyes welled up with tears. "The doctor gave me 6 months, maybe 8 with the treatment. I kept believing I would get better, that I'd call you when I was in remission, when I finally had good news to share. 8 months. And probably less now." I sank into the chair next to her bed and took her hand in both of mine. Her fingers were as cold as ice, despite the warmth of the room. "Where is Mark?" I tried to keep my voice even, but she must have detected the edge in it, because her expression changed. "He said he had some important business meetings this week," she said, looking away toward the window. "He said he would be back by the weekend." "When was the last time you saw him?" 3 days ago." The words were small and full of shame. "He's been so distant since the diagnosis. I think it frightens him." "Frightens him." My daughter was dying, and her husband was frightened. "Has he been taking care of you? Helping out with the kids?" "My neighbor, Emily, watches them during the day. Mark handles the practical things." But the way she said it, as if she were trying to convince herself, told me everything I needed to know. I spent the next hour just being there with her, holding her hand as she drifted between sleep and consciousness. Each time she woke, her eyes would find mine immediately, as if to make sure I was really there. As the evening sky outside the window darkened, she finally fell into a deeper sleep, her breathing even and calm. I gently let go of her hand and moved to the window, gazing out at the city lights that were beginning to sparkle like scattered diamonds. It was time to try Mark again. I pulled out my phone, his name glowing on the screen. This time, I would make him answer. I would make him explain where he had been while his wife was fighting for her life. The first call went to voicemail after a single ring. He was definitely screening his calls. I typed out a text message. "Your wife is in the ICU. Call me immediately." 5 minutes went by. Nothing. A second call from my phone had the same result. But then, I saw Clara's phone on the bedside table, plugged into its charger. Maybe if the call came from her number. I glanced at her sleeping form, then carefully picked up her phone. Mark's name was in her recent calls. But the last time he had called her was 2 days ago. 2 days since he had bothered to check on his dying wife. A third attempt. This time, using Clara's phone. Straight to voicemail again. In my frustration, I almost put the phone down. But then the screen lit up with a notification from Instagram. The app was still open, logged into Clara's account. At the top of her feed, Mark's story was highlighted with a red circle, indicating a new post. I tapped on it without a second thought. The first image made my blood turn to ice. It was the deck of a luxury boat, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Champagne glasses were catching the light. Someone's perfectly manicured hand was holding a flute up in a toast. The timestamp showed it was posted 2 hours ago. I swiped to the next picture. Mark's smiling face filled the screen. His arms were slung around 2 other men I didn't recognize. All 3 were wearing expensive sunglasses and looked like they had just walked out of a fashion magazine. Behind them, the vast expanse of Lake Michigan stretched out to the horizon. The caption read, "Living the best life with the boys." Posted 90 minutes ago. While I was learning, my daughter had cancer. My vision blurred with pure rage, but I forced myself to keep going, to document everything, screenshot after screenshot. Each new image was another knife twisting in my gut. Mark lounging on spotless white cushions. Mark diving off the side of the boat into the water. Mark raising yet another glass of champagne as the sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange. The final part of the story was a video of him talking directly to the camera. Nothing like a few days away from reality to clear your head. You know, sometimes you just have to live a little away from reality. His wife was hooked up to machines, and he was talking about getting away from reality. I checked the location tag. Navy Pier. Less than an hour away from this very hospital. My hands shook as I typed another message. "I see you're having a good time. Your wife is dying. Call me." Then another one. "I have screenshots. We need to talk." Still no reply. I paced the small hospital room, trying to be quiet so I wouldn't wake Clara, my mind racing. I was just beginning to grasp the full picture. A boat rental like that had to cost thousands of dollars a day. Mark was a business consultant. He was successful, but not rent a yacht for fun successful. Where was this money coming from? Looking back at Clara's peaceful face, I whispered the promises I should have made to her months ago. "I won't let him hurt you ever again, sweetie. Mommy's here now, and I am going to fix this." The monitor beside her bed beeped its steady rhythm, each sound marking another heartbeat, another moment of life that Mark was squandering while partying with his friends. How long had this been happening? How long had she been suffering all by herself while he was out playing the part of a single man? I went back to the phone, methodically taking screenshots of everything. The architect part of my brain took charge. Document all the evidence, build the case, identify the points of leverage. Mark may have thought he could just abandon my daughter in her most desperate hour, but he had made one critical, unforgivable mistake. He had forgotten that Clara had a mother who would burn his entire world to the ground to protect her. My phone vibrated with an incoming call. Mark's name flashed on the screen. I looked at Clara one last time, her thin face finally at ease in sleep, and then I stepped out into the hallway. It was time to have a conversation. I slipped back into Clara's room, where she was sleeping peacefully, her quiet breaths a counterpoint to the steady beeping of the monitors. "I'll be right back, sweetie," I whispered, gently kissing her forehead. "I'm just going to grab some coffee." The elevator took me down to the main floor, past signs for various hospital departments. The cafeteria was located in a corner of the ground level, mostly deserted at this hour, except for a few medical staff on their break. I bought a coffee I had no intention of drinking and found a quiet table in the back, pulling out my phone to look at that picture of the boat again. The image seemed to burn brighter every time I saw it. Mark's wide, carefree smile, the immaculate deck, the champagne glasses glinting in the sun. How could a business consultant afford a $15,000 boat rental? That question sparked a memory that made my blood run cold. About a year ago, Mark had come to me, talking about family emergencies and unexpected medical bills. Sophie needed extensive dental work, he'd claimed. The house needed major repairs. He asked if I could help them out by giving him access to my backup savings account, just temporarily. Just until we get back on our feet, he had promised. Clara doesn't need the stress of worrying about money on top of everything else. I had been so impressed by his apparent concern for my daughter's well-being. What a devoted husband, I had thought, shielding his wife from financial troubles. My hands were shaking as I opened my banking app and navigated to the joint account I had set up for Mark's emergency use. The transaction history loaded with agonizing slowness, each line item appearing like a piece of evidence at a trial. Chicago Yacht Charters, 15, null. Posted yesterday. Nobu, Chicago, 850, 3 days ago. Mercedes service, Gold Coast, 400, last week. Magnificent Mile shopping, 200, 10 days ago. The list just kept going. A months-long trail of extravagant spending while my daughter was wasting away in a hospital bed. Every single dollar he had squandered on champagne and boat parties had come directly from my account. Every designer purchase, every lavish dinner, every moment of his carefree life had been financed by the mother of the wife he had abandoned. I took a screenshot of every single transaction. My architect's mind was methodically constructing a case. The dates told the whole story. As Clara's health declined, Mark's spending escalated. While she was enduring her first rounds of chemotherapy, he was shopping on the Magnificent Mile. While she was losing her hair from the treatments, he was dining at 5-star restaurants. That parasitic son of a... I stopped myself before the anger could completely cloud my judgment. Rage was a powerful fuel, but cold, hard calculation would be more useful to Clara right now. I took out a small notebook and started writing down important information: account numbers, transaction IDs, a systematic plan to cut off Mark's financial supply line. He had made a fatal error. He had used my money to bankroll his betrayal. It was time to show him what happens when you cross an Ohio architect who has spent 40 years solving complex problems. The hospital cafeteria hummed quietly around me. The whir of vending machines, the distant sound of overhead announcements, the soft chatter of exhausted medical staff, but I wasn't really there. My mind was in full strategic mode, assessing vulnerabilities and planning my counterattack. Mark thought he could party his way through his wife's terminal illness on my dime. He was about to find out that every action has a consequence, and some consequences are delivered with mathematical precision. I finished my now cold coffee and stood up, putting the notebook filled with bank information into my purse. Step 1. Immediate financial amputation. Cut off his access entirely before he could waste another cent of my money. Step 2 would be a bit more personal. I found a quiet alcove near the hospital chapel and sat down in a wooden chair with my phone and notebook. The irony was not lost on me. Planning financial warfare just steps away from a place of peace that I had no desire to enter. The bank's emergency hotline answered on the third ring. First, National Emergency Services. This is Amanda. How may I help you this evening? This is Eleanor Vance, account holder. I need to revoke an authorized user's access on my accounts immediately. I kept my voice calm and professional. I will need to verify your identity first, Mrs. Vance. Can you please provide your social security number and your mother's maiden name? I recited the information while double-checking my notes. 45 years of banking with the same institution meant they probably recognized my voice, but rules were rules. Thank you. I see that Mark Monroe has had authorized access to your backup savings account since April of 2023. Are you requesting a complete revocation of his privileges? Immediate and permanent removal, and transfer all remaining funds to my primary secured account. I must inform you that this action is irreversible and may impact any automated payments or services that are linked to that account. Are you sure you wish to proceed? Cancel everything associated with his access. Every automatic payment. Every linked service. Every recurring charge. Each word was crisp and final. One moment, please, while I process these changes. The hold music began to play as I watched a security guard walk by, giving me a respectful nod. Just a normal evening at the hospital. While I was systematically demolishing Mark's financial world. Mrs. Vance, I have now revoked Mr. Monroe's access to the savings account and have initiated the transfer of the remaining funds. That will be $127,000 moving to your primary account. I am also showing 3 credit cards with authorized user status in his name. Shall I cancel those as well? $127,000. Mark had been living off my money for 2 years while my daughters suffered in silence. Cancel every card. Remove him as an authorized user from all accounts. Delete his contact information from any emergency notifications. Processing now. Okay, that is complete. Mr. Monroe will be notified that his cards have been deactivated, and any attempted transactions will now be declined. Is there anything else I can assist you with tonight? Set up fraud alerts in case anyone tries to access these accounts using his information. They are already in place, ma'am. You will receive confirmation emails shortly. I hung up and immediately opened my banking app to confirm the changes. Account access revoked. Credit cards canceled. Automatic payments terminated. The digital trail confirmed that Mark's financial lifeline had been severed with surgical precision. My phone buzzed with the first confirmation email, and then another. Each notification felt like a small dose of justice, delivered electronically. Let's see how long the boat party continues when his credit cards start getting rejected. I closed my notebook with a satisfying snap and put my phone away. The structural part of the problem was now solved. Identify the system failure, isolate the faulty component, and remove it permanently. Mark's access to my resources now existed only in his own deluded mind. As I stood up from the chair, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Not the weight of Clara's illness, that burden would remain until she either recovered or she didn't, but the crushing knowledge that I had been unwittingly financing her abandonment. That specific torture was finally over. Mark could enjoy his boat for the rest of the night. Tomorrow, when those cards were declined and his calls went unanswered, he would learn what happens when a parasite is cut off from its host. I walked back towards the elevator, past the chapel door that was still slightly ajar, past the nurse's station where the evening shift change was underway. The normal rhythms of the hospital continued, while one small act of justice had been quietly executed. Clara was awake when I returned, staring up at the ceiling with that distant, haunted look I had seen too many times today. The room was softly illuminated by the monitoring equipment, creating an intimate bubble separate from the harsh reality of the hospital just outside her door. "Hey, sweetie. How are you feeling?" I set down my untouched coffee and pulled the chair right up to her bedside. "Better. Now that you're here." She turned her head towards me, and I could see that something had changed while I was gone. "Mom, I need to tell you something about Mark." I took her hand, noticing again how cold her fingers were. "Take all the time you need, honey. I'm here to listen." "He changed after Leo was born," she began, her words coming out slowly, as if she were testing them for safety. He started saying that I wasn't contributing enough financially. My freelance design work became harder when Leo was a colicky baby, and Mark, he said I was a burden. My free hand balled into a fist beneath the hospital blanket, but I forced my voice to remain gentle. A burden? You were raising 2 children? He said the medical bills were destroying his future plans. That he'd married a partner, not a patient. She looked away, a flush of shame coloring her cheeks. When the cancer diagnosis came, he just shut down. He started staying out later, making up excuses about work meetings. What kind of man abandons his sick wife? I couldn't keep the anger entirely out of my voice this time. I kept thinking that if I just got better quickly, if I didn't complain about the treatments, maybe he would come back to us, be the father that Sophie and Leo deserve. Tears began to slide down her cheeks. But he's not coming back. Is he, Mom? I smoothed her hair back from her forehead, just like I used to when she was 7 and scared of thunderstorms. Sweetheart, you are perfect just the way you are. Any man who is unable to see that doesn't deserve you for a second. I feel so stupid for defending him to you all these years, for making excuses for why he never called you back, or why he was always too busy for family holidays. She squeezed my hand with the little strength she had. You were right about him from the very beginning, weren't you? I had never spoken a single negative word about Mark to her face. But mothers see things that wives sometimes choose to ignore. I was wrong about one thing. I thought that he at least loved you. Even if I didn't particularly like him, I never imagined he would leave you to fight this all by yourself. The hardest part is going to be telling Sophie why Daddy isn't here anymore. She keeps asking when he's coming home. Clara's voice broke completely. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her father chose his own comfort over her mother's life? A nurse came in quietly to check her vitals, giving us a momentary pause. When she had left, I leaned closer to Clara. You don't have to worry about any of that ever again. You just focus on getting better. I will handle everything else. Mom, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm telling you. Your only job right now is to heal. Leave Mark, the finances. Leave all of it to me. I kissed her forehead. You will never have to deal with his selfishness again. Exhaustion was clearly setting in. The emotional release draining what little energy she had left. Her eyelids grew heavy as she fought to stay awake. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. Don't let your anger at Mark consume you. I need my mom. Not another angry person in my life. I pulled the blanket up over her as her breathing deepened into sleep. I promise, sweetheart. Get some rest now. But as I watched her drift off, I knew it was a promise I might not be able to keep. The man who had sworn to love and protect my daughter had stolen her money, abandoned her in her time of greatest need, and broken our grandchildren's hearts. Some actions demand more than just forgiveness. They demand consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The phone vibrated insistently in my hand. An unknown number with a Chicago area code glowing on the screen. I glanced at Clara, sleeping peacefully, then quietly stood and walked over to the window. Hello. My voice was ice. Eleanor? What did you do? My cards were just declined in front of everyone. Mark's voice was a frantic mix of panic and humiliation. Fix this. Right now. Where are you at this moment, Mark? I completely ignored his demand. That's none of your business. Listen, old woman. You need to restore my access immediately. Or, my daughter is dying in a hospital bed, I said, each word dropping like a stone into still water. And you are out partying on a boat with my money. Silence. Then sputtering. How did you... That's not... This is for business networking. Through the phone, I could hear it all. The party music, the laughter, the sound of waves lapping against the hull. The sounds of a man living it up while his wife was fighting for her life on someone else's dime. $15,000 for a boat rental, Mark. My $15,000. I kept my voice low, conscious of Clara stirring behind me, while your wife was in intensive care. You can't just cut me off. I have rights. I'm her husband. You were her husband. Past tense. I turned to see Clara's eyes were open, watching me, with a look of dawning comprehension. You made your choice when you picked champagne over chemotherapy appointments. Listen, you don't understand the kind of pressure I've been under. Pressure? My voice hardened. What pressure, Mark? The pressure of having unlimited access to my bank account while you abandoned your family. His tone shifted, becoming cold and calculating. Restore my access, or I'll file for divorce and I'll take the kids. I will make sure Clara loses everything in court. That was his final mistake the moment he threatened my grandchildren. Mark, I said quietly, and something in my tone made even him pause. You have just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life. Behind me, I heard Clara's sharp intake of breath. She was fully awake now, listening to every single word, finally hearing the true voice of the man she had married, selfish, threatening, and completely devoid of remorse. I know exactly where you are, I continued. I know exactly what you have been doing. I know exactly how much of my money you have spent while my daughter fights for her life, and now, I know exactly what kind of man threatens to take children away from their dying mother. You can't do this to me. I have a reputation to maintain. People are watching. Yes, they are watching. They're watching you get your credit cards declined because you're a parasite who can't even pay his own bills. Mark's voice cracked. Eleanor, wait. Let's just talk about this reasonably. I made some mistakes. But we can work this out. I'll come to the hospital right now. We can. I looked at Clara and saw tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. Finally understanding who she had married. Finally seeing her mother protect her, the way a parent is supposed to protect their child. No, Mark, I said softly. We can't work this out. The silence stretched between us, his panicked breathing audible over the line. In the background, I could hear his world-collapsing boat engines being cut, voices arguing about payment, the party atmosphere dissolving into chaos. Eleanor? Are you there? Please, I can explain everything. I turned from the window and walked back to Clara's bedside, taking her hand while keeping the phone pressed to my ear, her fingers intertwined with mine, squeezing tightly in support. Gary, you chose a boat over your dying wife. You chose parties over your children. You chose my money over your family's future. My voice dropped to a near whisper, but each word cut like a razor. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. I can change. I'll be different. I'll come home and I'll take care of everyone. If you ever come near my daughter or my grandchildren again, I will utterly destroy you. Clara's grip tightened, her eyes wide, as she finally heard the protective mother she had needed all along. Financially, legally, socially, I will make sure that everyone in your life knows exactly what you are. You can't do this. I have rights. I'm her husband. You abandoned your sick wife for boat parties. You stole money from her mother to finance your selfish lifestyle. You threatened to take her children away from their dying mother. I paused, letting each brutal fact hang in the air. What court in the world do you think will side with you? His voice broke completely. I have nowhere to go. My friends won't even look at me after the whole card incident. The yacht company is threatening to call the police. I made mistakes, but everyone deserves a second chance. You had your second chance every single day for the past 6 months. Every day you chose not to be here. Every day you chose not to hold her hand during her treatments. Every day you chose parties over your family. Clara was crying now, but they were tears of liberation. 20 years of making excuses for Mark's behavior. And now she was hearing her mother speak the truths she had been too afraid to even think. Please, Eleanor, I am begging you, just give me enough money to get home, and we can— No. The word hung in the air like a final verdict. You are done, Mark. Done with my money. Done with my family. Done hurting the people I love. But I don't have anywhere to— I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number. The action felt as final as slamming a door shut. Then I sat on the edge of Clara's bed, lifted her hand to my lips, and kissed her knuckles, just like I used to when she was a little girl and afraid of the dark. Thank you, Mommy, she whispered. You never have to thank me for protecting you, sweetheart. That's what mothers do. She squeezed my hand tighter. I was so scared to leave him. Scared of being alone with the kids. Scared of admitting that I had made such a horrible mistake. You are not alone. You will never be alone again. I smoothed the hair back from her forehead. And it wasn't your mistake. It was his. Every selfish choice, every cruel word, every single moment, he chose himself over his family. That is on him, not you. For the first time since I had arrived in Chicago, Clara smiled. A genuine smile, filled with hope instead of fear. Get some rest, I said softly. Tomorrow, we start planning your future, a future where no one ever gets to hurt you again. She closed her eyes, her breathing already deeper and more peaceful than I had seen it all day. The monitoring equipment beeped its steady rhythm beside us, counting heartbeats, counting moments, counting the start of a new life. Outside the window, the lights of Chicago sparkled against the night sky, indifferent to one small family's victory over cruelty. But inside room 712, justice had finally been served, and the healing could begin. 1 year later, in 2025, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window of our new house in Ohio, casting golden squares across the hardwood floor where Sophie's art supplies were spread out in a state of organized chaos. The sound of children's laughter drifted in from the backyard, mingling with the steady, rhythmic chop of Clara preparing vegetables for lunch. I paused in the doorway, just watching my daughter, who moved with an energy and grace that had returned to her. Month by month, her hair had grown back, even thicker than before, framing a face that was radiant with health and true happiness. The haunted look was gone, replaced by the confident woman I had raised, the one who had been buried for years under Mark's manipulation. Mom, you're lurking again, she said without turning around. Her familiar teasing tone, telling me everything I needed to know about her recovery. Just admiring the view, sweetheart. I still can't quite believe you're really here. Through the window, I could see Leo showing Sophie how to throw a perfect spiral pass with a football, his grandmother's techniques passed down with patient instruction. Now at 8 and 6, they had adjusted to their new life, with the kind of resilience children have when they finally feel completely safe. The divorce had been swift and decisive. Mark's threats about custody vanished the moment his lawyer reviewed the recorded phone calls and saw the bank statements. A man who had abandoned his terminally ill wife while spending her mother's money on boat parties did not garner much sympathy from family court judges. Grandma, Sophie's voice called through the screen door. Come show Leo how to catch better. In a minute, honey, I called back, then turned to Clara. How are you feeling today? Really feeling? She put down her knife and faced me, and I saw in her eyes what Dr. Chen's tests had confirmed 3 months ago. Complete remission. I feel like myself again. Maybe even better than myself. Stronger. The kitchen timer went off, and she pulled a pan of cornbread from the oven, David's recipe, the one I had taught her so many years ago. Some traditions were worth holding on to. Remember what you used to tell me when I was little and afraid of thunderstorms? She asked, placing the hot pan on a cooling rack. That storms always pass. But family is forever. You were right. She hugged me tightly, the way she used to before marriage, and illness and fear had created such a distance between us. Write about the storms, write about family, and write about Mark. I had never said, "I told you so," about her ex-husband, and I never would. Clara had endured enough, without me adding shame to her burdens. The restraining order spoke far louder than any words I could have offered. "Mom, Sophie scored a touchdown," Leo burst through the screen door. His knees stained with grass, and his face alight with pure joy. Behind him, Sophie was performing an elaborate victory dance that would have made her grandfather roar with laughter. "A touchdown celebration absolutely calls for extra cornbread," Clara announced, cutting generous, steaming squares in the afternoon light. Later, as evening painted the Ohio sky in shades of orange and pink, the four of us sat on the front porch swing. It had been David's favorite part of our old house, and I had salvaged it and rebuilt it here, where it belonged. Sophie dozed against my shoulder, while Leo peppered me with questions about the stars that were beginning to appear in the twilight sky. "Will you tell us the story about how you saved Mom again?" Sophie mumbled sleepily. "Sweetheart, your mom saved herself. I just helped clear some of the obstacles out of her way. Like the bad man who went away." "Exactly. Like the bad man who went away." Clara reached over and squeezed my hand. A gesture that had become our private shorthand for gratitude, love, and the kind of bond that a crisis either shatters or makes unbreakable. We had chosen unbreakable. This is what winning feels like, I thought, watching my grandchildren's eyelids grow heavy in the peaceful evening. Not the moment of confrontation, though hearing Mark's tearful pleading had been satisfying, but the years of quiet happiness that come after. The ordinary Tuesday evenings when no one is fighting for their life, no one is betraying anyone, and the only drama is whether Leo will finish his broccoli. The stars emerged one by one above us. The same constellations David and I had watched from this very swing decades ago, back when Clara was the same age Sophie is now. Some things change. Marriages end. People let you down. Illness challenges every belief you have about what is fair. But some things endure. The love between a mother and her daughter, the resilience of children, and the deep satisfaction of protecting what matters most. Tomorrow, Clara would work on her latest design project, while the kids were at their new school. I would tend to the garden David had always dreamed of, and maybe start that new woodworking project for Sophie's dollhouse. A normal life. The kind of life that is worth fighting for. Tonight, though, we just sat together under the vast Ohio sky, 3 generations, bound by love and tested by fire, finally safe in the peace we had earned.